Welcome to Heidi Relationships. Today, we'll read some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. That would help the channel a lot. Thank you very much in advance.
The first one is titled, "My lawyer and I laid a trap for my adulterous alcoholic wife in my divorce." When I got divorced, my alcoholic wife of 18 years had started another affair, this time with her addictions counselor. My lawyer and I laid a trap for them. Just in case you don't know, intimate relations between a counselor and patient are very frowned upon by the regulatory bodies. And I was more than pissed after putting her through rehab, $25,000, which I didn't have to do, only to have her fall back into her old behavior. Shortly before the divorce was finalized, I filed a complaint with the state body licensing health professions. Knowing they were in some peril because of their unprofessional relationship, I had already gotten him fired from a major teaching hospital. She had backed off her exorbitant demands. I paid her a very modest settlement, kept the house, got custody of the 3 teenage kids, plus got child support. Her lawyer naturally included a clause in the divorce where I had to agree to not say anything negative about her lover and their relationship. But the lawyer ducked up and never asked if I had already filed charges and thus didn't require me to rescind them. Her lawyer had assumed I was just bad-mouthing them to neighbors and friends, and it never occurred to the lawyer that we were doing much more. When the Board of Health Professions responded to my complaint shortly after the divorce was finalized, I told them that it would take a subpoena to get me to testify. A subpoena trumps an agreement in a divorce settlement. They were happy to oblige. They stripped his license and placed him on a register of sanctioned health professionals. He never worked again. They were breaking in a handful of years, and she divorced him when the money ran out. In the interim, his mother had died, leaving a fair-sized estate, so it took longer than I expected. Oh, and the frosting on the cake was that his wife and I traded notes, notably hotel receipts from the time of their affair, that helped each of us in our respective divorces. Justice was served. The next one is titled, "I Ada for taking away my wife's access to our money." I have been married to my wife, Sarah, for 7 years. I am the only one that works. Sarah spends her time volunteering at a charity she started. I am fine with this as I make enough for both of us. In financial decisions we have equal say. I will admit that I am the numbers nerd of the relationship, so I do the budget and handle our investments. My wife has equal input into the budget, we both have to agree on it. Like many people, we are saving for retirement and a couple of other financial goals. Sarah's sister and her family are going through a lot of financial issues at the moment. My Bill lost his job and my Sil is reaching out to my wife for help. They are asking for us to cover their monthly expenses. I said no. While we have some discretionary money, we don't have that much. Both my wife and I get fun money to spend however we wish each month. I told my wife that I would match whatever amount of her fun money she wants to give her sister from my fun money. My wife doesn't want to do that. She says that won't be enough money. She wants us to reduce the amount we are saving each month to help her sister. I refused. I do not want to jeopardize my family's future for her sister's present. Sarah was very unhappy with my answer, but I refused to change my mind. I found out last week that my wife gave her sister money out of our general savings account. I was furious. To me, this is a complete betrayal of trust. I confronted her and her reply was that I forced her to go behind my back by being unreasonable. I was angry. I ended up going to the bank and opening up new accounts in my name only. I moved the balances to my new accounts. I left in enough money for the expenses that she typically pays according to our budget, things like groceries, her gas, etc., as well as her fun money. I did not leave her without access to any money. I did leave her with access only to money that she is supposed to spend according to the budget we both agreed to. I went home and told her what I had done. She is accusing me of financially abusing her. I pointed out that she is the one that abused my trust, not the other way around. That is, it is on her to prove to me that she is worthy of my trust, because after what she did, I don't trust her anymore. She said if that was the case, she should just leave. That she wasn't going to be treated as a child. I told her to leave then because I wasn't going to give her the opportunity to steal from me again when it is clear she isn't even sorry for what she did. She left to stay with her sister. I believe I am completely justified for what I have done. She is the one that broke our agreement. Did I take it too far though? This was the first time she ever did anything like this. Did I let anger get the best of me? Ida for taking away her access to the money? A user in the comments said, "NTA, you nailed it there at the end. She stole from you. No excuse. My husband and I have a similar financial arrangement, and I simply cannot imagine doing what your wife did. Such a betrayal." Another user said, "So, she has gone to stay with her sister, the one who's broke. So, now there's another mouth to feed in that house and she's going to essentially be the sole provider for that household out of her own money? I think she'll be back. The question is whether Op will want her back." Betrayal is exactly the word. Op made a reasonable suggestion for the amount of financial help they could offer her sister's family, but that wasn't good enough. She stole from the person she is supposed to be in love with, who has supported her financially for the duration of the marriage, and then even had the nerve to claim financial abuse when Op moved to protect his hard-earned assets. He is definitely NTA. The next one is titled, Update. Ida for taking away my wife's access to our money. Well, it looks like the posters that commented that my marriage is doomed were correct. First, after reading the posts I agreed that it was not fair that I had access to our savings, and she did not, even though she gave some away without my consent. Following the advice of several posters, I contacted my bank and I found that the account could be changed so that while both of us could deposit money, it would take both our signatures to take money out of the account. This would give her the same control over the accounts that I had by putting them under my name. I contacted Ashley to let her know that I would put the money back in the joint account if we switched the account to require both of our signatures. She said no, that just showed that I didn't trust her. I told her I didn't, she had taken money without my consent. Of course, I didn't trust her. She refuses to change the account. I refuse to give her unrestricted access. So right now, I am still the only with access to the money. We also tried marriage counseling, another suggestion that posters brought up multiple times. The counselor asked both of us to say what we thought was wrong with our relationship. Ashley said that I had abused her by taking away her access to money. I said that Ashley had broken my trust by giving away money without my consent. It took a few sessions, but it became pretty clear that we just weren't going to see things the same way. I wasn't going to commit to supporting her sister's family, and she refused to see giving them money without my consent as a breach of trust. The kicker came when it goes be close to the end of the month and Ashley demanded, not asked, demanded, that I put $3,000 in the account for her to use pay her sister's bills. Her reasoning was since she stayed there we owed it to them. I told her she was ridiculous and that if I wouldn't do that while we were together, why in the world would I do it now? She walked out of the session and told me that she wouldn't continue counseling until I agreed. I contacted a lawyer and filed for a legal separation and will be filing for divorce. I found that I am legally obligated to pay usual and ordinary bills of the household, but I am not required to pay any bills for where she moved to since she left voluntarily. So, I am doing what I am required to, including things like paying for her car insurance and her cell phone, but I am not giving her access to any other funds. She has asked, more like demanded, I give her money as she will be getting it when we divorce, but I don't have a way of making sure whatever she is given comes out of the final settlement, so I am refusing. The next one is titled, Me, 32, F. With my husband, 39M. 6 years, our sex life disappeared. He swears he's attracted to me and I'm not sure what to believe or do. Before I got into this, I want to stress that I know something is definitely wrong with my relationship. I just have no idea how to approach it or what to do at this point. My husband and I started dating 6 years ago and we were married for the last 3 years. We had a very active sex life when we were first dating. We'd have some weekends where we were basically living the bed, 3x a day. About a year and a half into the relationship, he asked to move in together and we got engaged shortly after. Once we were engaged, our sex life screeched to an immediate halt. I kept bringing it up, and he would say he thinks it's because we both moved from drafty houses to a high-end apartment that we'd be snuggled all the time for warmth, which would lead to sexy times. But I also noticed if I tried to set or make flirty comments, he'd change the subject pretty quickly. I chalked things up to wedding nerves, and we got married. We had a 3-week honeymoon in the Caribbean where we did nothing but lounge around with each other pretty much. Even though I tried to initiate a few times, we didn't have sex at all on our honeymoon. When we got back, I threw on some sexy lingerie and tried to surprise him when he came home. He burst out laughing. At that point, I flipped out and pointed out that something is obviously wrong, and that this is too soon in a marriage for something like this to happen. He said that the wedding was really stressful for him, and he needed to unwind. At this point, one of my friends mentioned something seemed different about my husband. None of them are in the loop as to everything going on. After this continuing the same way, I brought it up again. He said that the truth is that he feels trapped in the apartment with me. We both went from living in houses to living in a one-bedroom together. That seemed fair enough, and we bought a house together. This did not change our situation in terms of the bedroom. But since we keep money separate, I do not recommend. I have student loans, and houses are expensive. I picked up a second job bartending 3 nights a week to make sure I wasn't stretching my money too thin. Then the excuse became, "You are never home." He started getting angrier and angrier about me never being home, even when I pointed out all the time I was actually at home. I went out with my friends less frequently to make sure I was around and available, but all that did was kill my social life and not boost our relationship. Then it started getting worse. I would get home from my bartending shift, and he'd start yelling at me. It usually started with, "You are never home," but was pretty erratic. He'd switch subjects, and things he was angry about switched pretty quickly. But he would also say some really hurtful things, such as, "I'm not attracted to you. If you want to have sex, go duck someone else. I kind of fell into marrying you." It was the path we were already on, and I felt like I couldn't do anything to stop it. "You have the personality of a 5-year-old. What adult tears up at a ducking puppy?" Let me be clear, I do not want to be with someone uninterested in being with me. But whenever I'd bring it up the next day, he'd act like I was exaggerating the fight and what he said and say of course those things aren't true and that he loved me very much. If I told him I thought he didn't love me in the romantic way, it usually brought him to tears. And just a side note that I've been in shape since the start of our relationship and that hasn't changed. I didn't know whether or not to believe him in my experience. People tend to accidentally say what they really mean when angry. So, I took these things to heart and became really, really sad. I was randomly bursting into tears throughout the day, but whenever I brought up how I felt, he insisted I had to trust what he said about being interested in me, attracted to me, and wanting to be married to me. I ended up seeing a counselor for a bunch of sessions. She helped me feel attractive again, like I deserved to be treated well, and that my expectations of someone I'm pretty recently married to aren't unreasonable at all. Which made me feel more empowered to take action. I started recording him yelling at me. I collected a few and then played them for him during the day. He actually looked genuinely shocked. He said it seemed like he was saying things just to hurt me and that he didn't mean anything he said, but he also didn't remember saying any of them. He said he was committed to fixing this for the future. And he started counseling. So, then he took me out on a super date of sorts, nothing really fancy, but all the things I liked to do. And it was a really fun, exciting night. All of a sudden at the bar, he went from smiling to angry in the matter of seconds. He snapped at me about something. I insisted we go home, and he spent the rest of the evening yelling at me. The next day I said I thought we needed a divorce. He begged me to try couples counseling instead. I told him that whatever was happening was an issue he was having and that he needed to figure that out before I'd even be interested in counseling. I drove over to the bar I work at for a few hours, not working, just needed to get out, and told a person I don't know very well what was going on, and she suggested that he has an adverse reaction to alcohol. When I came back, my husband presented the same theory about himself. He said he thinks that he has a really adverse reaction to alcohol and shouldn't drink anymore. I didn't really think he'd stop, but he stopped cold turkey and hasn't started again since. Fast forward to now, our sex life hasn't changed at all. And he's almost euphoric about not drinking alcohol anymore. He's cheerful and he's very kind to me, but nothing at all has changed about our sex life. I brought up couples counseling again, and he said he didn't think we need it because of how much better he's doing now that he isn't drinking anymore. I don't want to ruin his recovery by pushing hard on the fact that things are still not good. He insists he's attracted to me and loves me. I don't know if I should trust him when he says that, and I feel stupid for even thinking that maybe I should trust that he actually feels that way. I do know he feels affectionate towards me generally, but we really feel like roommates who are best friends. And that's probably why I've put up with all of this, because when it comes down to it, we get along really, really well. I just don't know what my next steps should be, or what I should even be feeling about this. Sometimes I think, well, if everything else is fine, why is sex so important? But it really is to me, plus I feel like he might be hiding all these feelings about me. Then again, he seemed so genuinely shocked by hearing himself say all those mean things about me. Could there be something else going on with him? Edit. I should actually emphasize, it isn't just sex. If I go in for a kiss, he pulls back so it's just a peck. He tells me he doesn't really like kissing, and doesn't understand the appeal. Update. Seriously, thanks so much. After reading all these comments, I'm going to give him an ultimatum. I am going to tell him that there is definitely something wrong, and that he has to go get his hormones checked and see a psychiatrist. After that, we are going to a couples counselor to talk about the things he has said about me, and if it isn't tied to a hormone thing, the sex, the underlying issue. And then we explore either moving forward or divorce. If he is unwilling to do that, we start the divorce process. A user in the comments said, so, this might be a dumb question, but could he be gay? I mean, I just have a hard time believing someone wouldn't have sex on their honeymoon and then try to justify it. But yay, nothing about this is even close to normal. I'm glad his yelling is under control, but the hurtful things he said must have come from somewhere in his head. I would say you should have a talk with him about this, but it sounds like you already have many times. This sounds like sort of a lost cause to me. He clearly doesn't value sex as much as you do, and you are by no means abnormal or wrong for wanting that. Another user said, this really sounds fishy all around. I'm sorry you had marriage troubles so soon after tying the knot. His behavior sounds like it has two possibilities, to me, in my opinion. Take it or leave it, it sounds like either he's hiding something or that he's clinically bipolar. I dated a bipolar person, not fun, who would have emotional outbursts one night, and genuinely not remember them the following day. On to the next theory. Being in recovery myself, I can relate to how he feels about not drinking and being genuinely happier. That's awesome, good for him. But you said that you feel like your roommates. I don't mean to be mean, but does he have bisexual, homosexual tendencies? Statistically speaking, most couples are sexually active in the beginning of their marriages, and it declines over time, not the other way around. Just food for thought. The next one is titled, Update, Me, 32, F. With my husband, 39M. 6 years. Our sex life disappeared. He swears he's attracted to me and I'm not sure what to believe or do. I know my original post is so old, but the biggest update only recently happened. My therapist suggested I post about it here to help sort out how I feel right now and also as a warning to other people. I feel like I have grown so much in the last few years and maybe I'm a bit less naive, or a bit more bitter. However you'd like to put it. Through interacting with the comments, I came up with an ultimatum I would give my husband. He needed to get his medical stuff tested. He sees someone psychologically. Couples counseling. I decided ahead of time that he'd have to do the legwork for this already. I had already done so much legwork for this relationship and I wanted to make sure I didn't hold his hand through this either. He took it surprisingly well for what the conversation was. There were tears on both sides, but he agreed that yes, he would be willing to do these things for the sake of the relationship. And then days passed. And a week passed. I finally brought it up again and it caused a minor fight where he told me he needed to do this sort of stuff on his own time. A few more weeks passed. I realized that he did not care enough to do something about this. It was a hard thing to realize, but it was clear as day. I headed over a friend's house to talk things out, clear my head, and come up with a plan for divorce. I drove home and a few minutes before I arrived, he got a phone call that his sister was in a coma and dying. I booked him tickets to go see her. She passed away a few hours after he saw her. She left behind 2 late teenage girls, who we were now partially responsible for. So, I pushed my pain down and decided to be the best aunt I can to these two girls. I also got myself a dog, best decision ever in this situation, to keep my own spirits up. I worked really hard at this and felt like my husband and I were getting closer in the process. More recently, I started realizing that everything we were doing for the girls was initiated through me, not him. So, I started paying more attention. He was getting annoyed at me making a big deal over surprise care packages their school suggested we send in and other things like that. I was starting to resent that he wasn't caring for his nieces in the same way as I was. On the youngest niece's graduation day, I asked him if he thought the other parents there would be getting flowers for the graduates and if that's something we should do. This is when he totally lost it at me. It was a string that started with him yelling about how I get too concerned about these sorts of things and ended with a rant about how I buy too many crackers when company comes over for dinner. This started changing the lens I was looking at him through again. Also, at this point, I felt like my nieces had launched into the world with lives of their own. I started re-seeing the eye rolls when I talked. The cutting remarks about my intelligence. Oh, and the utter lack of sex. So, I started talking to people. I started seeing a therapist. And together, we all came up with a plan to discuss everything with him probably ending in divorce. Though I never took that as a definite. I decided we had a different view of what a relationship and marriage should be. My plan was to present that to him calmly and let him give his opinion of how he sees things. I had a work trip, so I took the time to recoup. I went on a long hike, and even though I'm not really religious, I prayed the whole damn time about this. So, when I got home, in the calmest and most even way I could, I explained the situation as I saw it and asked for his feedback. My friends and I rehearsed what would happen if he cried and begged for a chance to change or what to do, or rather, where to go, if he got really angry. But nothing prepared me for his reaction. He agreed with me. He said that everything felt forced to him and that this wasn't a natural relationship. That he married me because that was the path he was on, and since he wasn't planning on having kids, it's not like that mattered all that much. In fact, he prefers being alone generally. He then finished by asking if I thought we should get couples counseling. I calmly said that given what he just said, I didn't think that was an option. He immediately started trying to talk next steps, who gets what, etc. He brought up that he could probably technically fight for alimony but that he wouldn't. And said he wouldn't fight for my dog if I don't fight to go after his separate finances. I think this was the most painful in the moment reaction I could have had from him. I told him I would give him some space that night, so I drove to my friend's house and cried my eyes out. Him not fighting it is ultimately better for the long run, but it's really hard to realize that your husband of 5 years, and partner for 8, never really loved or cared for you. I should have listened to my gut all along. We had that talk last night. I'm currently sitting in a coffee shop, typing this all out. I'm a relatively attractive person and I channeled my frustrations over the last few years into lifting and working out almost every day. So, I'm hopeful when it comes to love in the future. I don't really know what my next step is. I might drive to my brother's. I might look for a storage facility. It's a bit overwhelming to think about. Overall, I'm so grateful this is happening now and that I won't be looking back at my life when I'm 85 years old, disappointed that it never really started. I have my life in front of me and it's a big scary place. But after I finish crying my eyes out, it's one step in front of the other. And thank you everyone for all your help. This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the relationship stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video and write a comment. I really appreciate your support and it helps my channel so much. Thank you.